Hello, I'm Howard Lake from UK Fundraising, and today I'm delighted to be speaking to Eoghan Beecher, who is Country Manager UK and Ireland at iRaiser. Hi, Eoghan.
Hi, Howard. How you doing?
Very well, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. Nice and busy.
Very good to hear. So tell me more about iRaiser. What do you do, and which kind of organisations do you work with?
Sure. We are very simply a digital fundraising software company. We provide various different applications to help charities and other nonprofits with fundraising activity. In the UK and Ireland, our primary two products are Payments, which is a software platform that takes all your payment gateways and produces really, really highly optimized donor facing checkouts, and also manages all your office stuff like exports and integrations with CRMs and everything like that. We also have a peer-to-peer platform, which is a white label events platform. So you can run challenge events through it. You can also use it for other peer-to-peer applications, including corporate and in MEM and stuff like that. I guess the principle of the company is that we provide first-party software platforms to charities and nonprofits so that they can have everything maintained within their own brand environment, within their own website environment, and also have first party relationships with their supporters and donors as well, which is something that's incredibly important in this day and age. We've, as a company, since about 2013, we have a huge operation in France. We've had clients in the UK and Ireland since broadly 2015, but in 2021 we launched our first brick and mortar office here. So we now have people on the ground supporting both UK and Ireland on a full-time basis, and really looking at how we can make sure that we give excellent support to this market and grow the way that charities fundraise and the amount of money they're raising.
Excellent. How did the P2P or events activity function over the last year and a half? Did you see a huge uptake of that?
Yeah, I mean, the amount of people engaging with virtual events is astounding. It really has phenomenal, the amount of not just people doing events themselves, but also the donations being put towards those events has increased as well. I think at the start of the pandemic, CAF estimated that the first 6 months in 2020 had seen an 800 million increase in donations in the UK alone, which is astounding. And I guess it shows that engaging digitally is producing a much more valuable experience for charities. They're getting a higher average gift, and they're giving more and more opportunities to donate. But more importantly, what it's also done is in some way democratized how peer-to-peer fundraising exists. I mean, on a very simple basis, a man walking up and down his garden raised 32 million for charity. That's, something that's really changed the way people look at it. But as well as that, it's made technology more accessible. You no longer need to pay to shut down a street or climb up a tower or, have massive integrated tech builds if you want to run your own event. If you're a smaller organization now, you can launch an event for a lot less money, and you can communicate with donors and engage them for almost nothing at this stage. And that means that there's more opportunities for a much broader level of organization to be able to speak to donors and, get their message out there in really innovative ways.
And was that activity last year, was it driven more by individuals using the tool, or by charities? Because until recently, it's always been the charities, and I just wonder if that part of that democratization was individuals demanding or expecting more, perhaps.
I would say it's individuals actively seeking out more things. And we've
Mm.
certainly seen that the start of the pandemic, charities who were already prepared, who already had some level of virtual and digital infrastructure in place, certainly benefited initially. And that does suggest that it's donor driven. It's people actively looking to take part in things. And I would say, part of that donor behavior is driven by something of a decentralization. If we think that, you're no longer commuting into a city center to work, it also means that you're no longer going to that city center gym. You're going out and running in the park, or you're going out and walking in your local community. And that means that there's a different type of energy and engagement in the world, as it is broadly speaking, but also in terms of how charities can engage with people who are doing that. And there is a thing of, always saying, if that's where your donors are, that's where you should go. And if your donors are going and walking around the park and doing their own thing and organizing their own community type exercise projects and things like that, if you're an events fundraiser, then that's where you should be aiming for. That's where your community exists. And, I think a lot more organizations have been facilitated by tech providers like ourselves and others that are out there to create that ask and to create those moments that they can give to those donors.
Yeah. I know you're particularly interested in the importance of checkouts and payment products, and you're keen for charities to be aware of just what is possible. Tell us more about those.
I would say what is possible, but also the existence of checkouts as a product. It's something that charities will go through. And prior to working at iRaiser, I was on the charity side for the best part of half a decade. And I think one of the things that I've always spoken about is understanding what a product is and where you can affect change. And I think for a lot of time, because resources were limited digitally for many years, then you might have had a situation where you looked at something like checkout as just a product you got in and you didn't look at it and you just launched it. And I think what we're now starting to understand much more is why users are visiting your website based on how they've come in, whether they've Googled you, whether they've accessed you through Facebook, whether they've clicked on an email. We can start applying intent and user stories to those journeys. And what that then means is we can understand why they're visiting, but also what's going to be a better experience for them. So we can understand that somebody who's Googled a charity's name has a very high intent to donate. So from a checkout perspective, they want a seamless experience. Whereas somebody who's clicked through a YouTube video maybe is not necessarily as high on the list of intent to donate, but what they want is more information and more value proposition. And what you can start doing with checkout software is serving the right ask to the right person, saying that for that person who all they want to do is donate as quickly as possible, you can give them a very seamless, quick to action page. And for the person who needs more information, you can have more content and you can be very specific, and check as that central point, probably the point that sees the most drop off. Charities can now understand why that drop off is happening and adjust in the right direction to stop it from happening. And most of the time, I would say, elements like usability is probably far more impactful in charities losing out on donations than the story. I mean, we know the vast majority of charities out there do amazing work, they tell amazing stories, but it's when a button doesn't work, somebody goes, I'll come back and do it later. And that's why checkout has to be that centrifugal point for a donation journey, because it is the point where the person engages at the highest level when they quite simply get their card out and make you a payment.
Yeah, fascinating. So personalized experience almost for in the actual checkout element, the final hurdle process.
And I guess it's looking at moments and understanding things on a different level. Because you have the information, I would say that it gives you an opportunity to move away from demographics and move away from understanding who somebody is and actually saying, well, right now at this very moment, what is that person doing? What's their intention? Because, for all intents and purposes, much more insight to be gained as to whether somebody's Googled to donate to a specific charity than there is for them, living in a certain town, being a certain age, or having a certain income bracket. What they're actively in the moment and in the market for is far more impactful for how you build your strategy. And technology now allows us to do it. And that's really important. And taking ownership of that technology for charities is going to be the thing that takes them to the next level and gets them to achieve the goals they have, really.
Yeah, I'm sure. So first-party software or relying on third-party platforms? I think I know which way you jump, but tell us the significance of that choice.
I mean, obviously, from a technical perspective, having more access and being closer to the activity is really important, because you get more control, you have better service level agreements, and there's more security attached to that. But from a charity perspective, I would also say that your relationship with supporters is very important. So when you're working with a third party platform, the merchant is the third party. The charity or the donor is giving money to the charity, or giving money to the third party on your behalf as a charity, and the third party is then giving you the money. What's not happening there is the person is coming in and speaking directly to you, and they're giving directly to you. You are not the merchant in that relationship, which means if the third party leaves the market, for example, then there's nothing they can do. They can't migrate those donors to you. Whereas if you are licensing your own software, even if that payment gateway was to decide to leave the market, they would still have a service level agreement in place where you could migrate those donors to another platform and keep them. So, from that perspective, the risk of losing things like regular donors and repeat donors when you're working with third parties is very high. And I think we're seeing that in particularly with some of the recent occurrences in the market right now. But more importantly, You want to be able to be the person that tells your own story. If you have business rules in terms of how you ask for people's information, how you ask to communicate with them in the future, then you should be able to customize that exactly how you want, because your donor is better than everybody else. You know what works and you know what doesn't work, and you can only really work that to the best of your ability by having a first party platform that gives you the control over it. And that's something that's really, really vital. So, at a really simple level, to draw a huge line under it, you're going to make more money in a more secure environment if you're working with first party platforms.
Very good advice. So what is next for iRaiser? What's coming?
Oh, exciting. I mean, immediately Christmas.
Yes.
We deal with large amounts of donations all over the world. Last year in the UK, we helped nonprofits process 25 million rather. And this year, we're estimating that will exceed 50 million. So it is an astounding level of growth for us, and we're expecting to service more and more charities, but also to come out with a more accessible product so that we can provide heavy traffic solutions to charities that have large volumes, but also a more accessible product for organizations that maybe aren't dealing with as much volume of donors, maybe don't have as much budget to license software, and need a more entry-level platform that allows them to very quickly have an excellent experience for their donors, but not invest the world in doing so. And I think that's part of the argument about democratizing fundraising. Can you give somebody an efficient and cheap donation tool that they can launch very quickly without needing to invest in a team of developers or invest in branding consultants or do that whole thing that maybe 3 to 4 years ago you would have had to talk about, securing a major corporate donor to afford to be able to do these things. Our position in the market is to speak to more charities and get more people involved in excellent fundraising and to make that accessible.
Fantastic. And I've just shared a link below where people can find out if they want to hear more about this from you. They can book a chat session with you via this link. Eoghan Beecher of iRaiser, thank you very much indeed.
Howard, thank you.